Hello and welcome to Superintendent's Roundtable. I'm Deborah Vinsel from Thurston Community Media. Periodically, we invite the superintendents from the 4 largest school districts in Thurston County to come talk about education and learning in our community. We're pleased to have them with us again today, so welcome. John Bash from the Tumwater Schools, Brian Wharton from the Yelm Community Schools, Deborah Clemens from North Thurston Public Schools, and Patrick Murphy from the Olympia School District. So thank you all for being with us. I know your schedules are busy. The calendar has whipped by since our last meeting earlier in 2018, and this is our last gathering for this school year. So we always talk about what the legislature is doing, and the last time we met, they were trying to do what they were going to do. So let's talk a little bit, look over our shoulders and talk a little bit about the legislative wrap-up. So who wants to take a stab at what the ledge did and how it's going to impact your districts?
Well, I'll
Go, John.
in. It's a long list of things, so I think
well, you can share.
The best piece would be just some of the highlights and lowlights, I guess. So let's start with some good news. They did finally pass a capital budget, and I think the last time we were here, we were concerned about that because statewide some projects were on hold. And so that's a piece of good news, and just today we were all talking about the importance of reaching out to our legislators to thank them for that good news. And maybe later in the show we can share a little bit about what that means in each of our districts. In addition, they did fund some additional money for supplemental learning in the Learning Assistance Program, and we were pleased that they have increased investment in education. But on the challenging side, they've complicated the way in which schools will now be funded, and not all schools will be funded at the same level. And so they've created some new rules, some new procedures, some new allocation models for staff. And what we're finding is that there's lots of confusion out in the community regarding what exactly did they do. And so one of the tasks in front of us is to really pull out our teaching skills and figure out how do we educate our staff, our community, our voters about what they did do. And one example I'll share, and then I'll defer to my peers here, is while they did increase state funding for staff salaries, which is good news, at the same time they took away local levy dollars. And that second piece is the part that we're not hearing the media cover, we're not hearing people talk about, but those are real dollars that we've lost. So if this was a math lesson, I'd have to say that's a subtraction problem as well, and we have to factor that part of the math into our planning. So internally, we're all doing the math now and how it affects each of our districts individually. And the interesting thing is it doesn't impact us all exactly the same way.
Well, how's it going to impact Tumwater?
Well, for us, we will see, based on a statewide average model now, the same amount of money a district in remote eastern Washington will see for their teachers, regardless of the experience level of our teachers or the education level of our teachers, which is above the state average. So in Tumwater, as an example, that's a real challenge because the former funding model used to recognize the average cost of a Tumwater teacher, and they would send us that average. Well, now they've gone to a state average. So it's one of many complicated things that we have to educate folks about.
Brian, you and I were talking before the show that the legislature was sending a letter to the Supreme Court. We did it. McCleary's done. Did they do it?
The devil's still in the details. And where John was headed a little bit is that the decisions the legislature made put us all back into bargaining with all of our different unions, whether we had closed contracts or not, or open contracts. And so all districts across the state are taking this average salary and going back to the bargaining table, and there's just so many different versions of what the money really looks like. Is it do we get to keep all the positions we currently have? Yes, we will be paying our employees more, but I think one of the outcomes might be that we have fewer employees who are making more money. We definitely want to pay our employees as much as we can, but it's hard when every district is back at the bargaining table. There's no ability to see what's common sense, what's rhyme and reason. It's making for a difficult spring in that standpoint. And when you're still at the bargaining table at this time of year, it creates difficulties in planning for next fall, and that's an important time in schools. So there are challenges ahead. There's definitely areas where there's more money, and we're very thankful for that. Special education is still not fully funded, in my opinion. Transportation is not fully funded, in my opinion. I think there's still more work to do in the area of administrative salaries. So yes, there was some really good work done, and no, we have more work to do.
Okay. Deb, how's it rolling out in North Thurston?
The same. I think there are a lot of shared understandings about what we need to figure out with regard to the new funding structure. I wanted to pick up on the special education topic because it was one of the legislative priorities for our board of directors, full funding for special education programming. The state of Washington did make a slight increase. They use a funding formula where there's a multiplier applied, and that provides additional funding to provide programming for students who are identified for special programming. In North Thurston Public Schools, in order for the state to fully fund special education, the multiplier would have needed to double, and it increased by 0.03. So movement, yes, but does not cover the true cost of providing basic education for students who are identified for special services. Because our local levy is being reduced, for next year, $9 million of our local levy will be used to fund special education programs. So that's one of our concerns.
Okay. Patrick, what about Olympia?
So I'm just going to echo much of what has been said. Well, I just think it's really important what Deb just said. You know, it needed to increase by 100%. It needed to double, but it increased by 0.033%. Right. So we in Olympia, we subsidize special education out of our general fund to the tune of over $4 million, and we got an increase of about $300,000 from the session. So that's better than zero, but there's a long way to go. I think the last time we spoke, Deb, Olympia was in some pretty dire straits, and I think there's something that we learned throughout Thurston County is that we have teachers that come to our school districts. They get hired and they stay and they're committed. So we have very high experience factors in our school district. And back to John's original point, that's what really hurt us the most. There was some movement in this session, again, sort of a small step in that direction where they did fund something called an experience factor for a few more school districts. We talked about regionalization last time, which was 93 districts out of 295. They added about another 40 districts into this experience factor, but you had to get to this line to get there. And we were fortunate in Olympia that we got there. We won't be seeing any of that money next year, but we will get some additional funds in the years after that for our high experience factor. So we feel fortunate for that. Also, back to the McCleary conversation, the question, did they do it? I think that there is a lot of McCleary fatigue out there, and I think that everybody wants them to do it. They just want to be done with it. And I think from the Supreme Court's perspective, at least by my reading of it, they say they're pretty close. And the fact that they took this $1 billion that they were waiting a year out to put into compensation and moved it up a year early, I think they're pretty much going to be said, yeah, you've done what you needed to do, at least from the court's perspective. That helped us, putting that money in a year early, significantly so, and so we are going to be whole going into next year. We're going to be able to keep our staffing ratios the same. We're going to be able to keep our services the same. No increases, but we feel pretty fortunate about that. But it's a one-year solution. And so, sadly, we're going to be in the same place next year of having to explain and educate that we're looking at deficits after that. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where we are.
So the changes in how teacher salaries are being calculated, and you all said you're going back to the bargaining table. Do you have any anticipation that you could lose staff who may be able to get a higher compensation in another district? I mean, is that a fear or a potential threat in your districts?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I
Yes.
would say there's a teacher shortage, and teachers who are mobile and want to be mobile can certainly take advantage of higher salaries in other districts. I think that what Patrick said is really true. Our teachers like it here, and I think they want to stay here. And our goal is to be able to fairly compensate them.
Okay.
I'd also add that they can go as close as Pierce County all the way up into Snohomish County and potentially see 18 to 24% more. And that's what I was saying earlier, is the state is not funding all districts equally. And their argument is it was based on an attempt to recognize cost of living differences. And that's what I've been sharing in Tumwater. How is it my colleagues, and I'm glad they got an enhancement in Olympia and Lacey, can see that, but Tumwater and Yelm don't. And when you look at home prices in our local area, it doesn't add up, but they came up with a methodology, and Patrick explained it well, that there was a cut line. Tumwater was just below that cut line, and it wasn't really based on home values or what most people would assume are cost of living indicators. It was based on kind of the experience level, the number of master's degrees your teachers had and years of experience, those kinds of things. So, you know, we asked lots of questions during the legislative session about why is that the benchmark? And we didn't get a real good answer. All we got was, hey, we got to come up with some sort of method, and there is an arbitrary nature to that legislatively when you're trying to figure out how to do that statewide. I personally don't agree with it, but that is what rolled out. Right. So, yeah.
So, Brian, you and I, again, earlier had said, when we were saying, did McCleary get done? You had said, well, you know, there may be McCleary 2.0 or 3.0 as we roll forward.
Yeah. I do think that once the fatigue is over a little bit, we'll start seeing more narrow looks at, are the funding formulas doing the job that they're supposed to be doing? It's one thing to fully fund a formula. It's another thing to determine if it's the right formula. And I really believe that special education will be the first foray into that discussion of what does it really take to fully fund students who have very increasingly diverse needs, and I know that's a huge issue in our districts.
Okay. So let's move on. I mean, we talk legislation and budgeting and funding every time we meet, and I'm sure we'll do it again in September. So we're kind of rolling toward the end of the school year. It's right there in front of us. So what's a really cool, noteworthy thing that's happening in your districts? We're going to start with you, Brian, that you want to share.
Lots of really noteworthy things, but the one that's most impressive from the amount of work that's been accomplished is we've really been successful in redefining the high school experience for students this year. And we made some significant partnerships and investments in college and the high school. And that's the opportunity for students to earn college credit by taking high school courses on the high school campus. And so when we start school next year, we'll have 22 classes that kids can take, and we can say that every junior and senior will have the opportunity to earn college credit in English, math, and science. And within 2 years, we'll be able to offer an AA degree option for our kids and not leave the campus. Mm-hmm. And so that's been some impressive work that our student learning group has done this year.
Who are you partnered with on that
We're
project?
partnered with two different institutions, Central Washington University and South Puget Sound Community College.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Were there other things you wanted to share? I kind of jumped in and cut you off there. Sure.
No, we've also followed the lead of Tumwater School District in the community and schools model, and our coordinator, who's been working in our middle schools, has done great work in providing resources for families. We have family resource centers in both schools. We have very successful after-school programming that's being supported by the district and by Together, where kids who really need some extra help are getting that help. We're excited about that. And we've really invested in assessment at our elementary levels this year, and we're very impressed and excited with the data that's starting to come out in the core areas.
Great.
Yeah.
Deb, what's new and exciting in North Thurston?
I have two that I can share. One is we piloted a one-to-one program in 2 of our middle schools. It's where our middle school students were assigned a Chromebook, and it was their Chromebook from the time that they started the day, and they took it home at night, and our teachers are using Canvas and other online tools to help students learn when they're at home as well as in the school. And it was so successful that we're expanding it to all of our middle schools next year. Eventually, it'll expand to our high schools the year following, and as a result of that, we'll be able to free up some of our Chromebook carts to also expand services at the elementary level. So, you know, parents came to a meeting and learned about what the limitations were for the use of the technology, as well as how to support their student. And we were just really pleased that it was so successful at the middle schools that we can expand it to all of the middle schools.
Great.
And part of it is, you know, one of the things that is a budget-related issue is how do we sustain technology and programs over the long run. And we have a 5-year refresh cycle that we've put into place in North Thurston, and that's how we're able to refresh those Chromebooks then to make sure students have access to the latest technology. I also wanted to share, we have a brand new program that we're kicking off right now for next year, and it's where our high school students can earn a varsity letter for community service. And it's a program where if a student is a junior or senior, in North Thurston right now, they're required to do 20 hours of community service. So the students that participate in this program would have to do an additional 145 hours of community service. And there are some requirements that they provide service within their school, within another school in the district, and then also out in the community. And so we're really excited because it marries so nicely with our new strategic plan about empowering our students, and that we want to create a culture of service within our school community. So we're pretty excited about that new initiative.
Are you partnered with any organizations on that program, or is that internally managed and
It's internally
operating?
managed in terms of students applying and then tracking their hours, but it has tons of community partners. We have Day of Champions coming up. That would be an example where they need lots of volunteers, where our students could go and volunteer their time and give back.
Great. That's great. Patrick.
Well, I think we talked about this last time, Deb, but I'm the new kid on the block, and I'm about 10 months into the job now. And one of the things I've really appreciated in my short time here is how collegial and collaborative the superintendent group is in Thurston County. So a lot of the stuff that Brian and Deb were talking about, and I'm sure John too, there's a lot of that that's happening in Olympia, or that we want to infuse into our system as well. Brian mentioned the college and the high school. That's a really important metric. It's part of the new achievement index through OSPI that research shows us that students that take a college level course in high school and complete it are not only more likely to apply, get into college, but actually complete it. And if we look at the students who are doing that historically, taking AP, IB, Running Start classes, there's a traditional group of kids that do and a demographic that doesn't. And so having more opportunities is really important. For instance, in the Olympia School District, we look specifically at special education students. And my special education director said to me, you know, our special education students, over 80% of them cognitively are as able as any other kid in the system. And yet our AP and IB seats in our classrooms, there's very, very few students on an IEP in those classrooms. So having more college and the high school opportunities, AP classes, we're talking to South Puget Sound Community College as well, and looking at ways that we can expand that, because we know the power of that for their future in doing that. Same with mental health, the Together partnership. We're going to be meeting with them as well to talk about are there ways that we can expand mental health services into our classrooms. If we don't meet our students' basic needs, they're not going to learn in their schools. But the two big things, and they're partly related to what I was just talking about, that are happening in our district that I'd like to share. One, we passed our technology and safety levy back in February. 70% of our voters is absolutely unbelievable. I think it was like the 4th or 5th highest supported ballot measure in the state. So I feel really grateful for that. And people told me, oh, Patrick, don't worry about it. Olympia always passes their measures. And I said, my last name is Murphy. There's a law that follows me around, and I don't take anything for granted. And that's a great show of support, and we have to live up to that confidence. And so we're really excited about our tech levy. There's a real strong equity component. We're going to be going to 1-to-1. so that all students have the same technology. We're going to be piloting in 2 middle schools next year and then flowing it out to all of our middle schools and high schools. But one thing that I think we're going to be really, really intentional about with that rollout is something that we're calling digital well-being, health. The health of our students in using technology and talking to our parents and our staff about that. The amount of screen time, the information that they're getting, how it's impacting their anxiety levels and all that information coming at once. And so we're going to be really, really intentional about that. We're working with organizations like Common Sense Media to think about what's the best way to do that, which is endorsed by OSPI. So that's going to be a really big focus for our tech levy rollout. The other thing that's big as a new superintendent, I'm coming in as our strategic plan is expiring. And so I've been charged by the board of directors to craft a new strategic plan and start by really building consensus in our community about what are those outcomes that we want for our students. And so on May 29th and 30th, we're going to try something different. It's going to be kind of bold, I think. It's an educational summit where we are inviting between 100 and 150 people into a room to see if we can't come to consensus on that. And we're going to be really intentional about making sure 1/4 of the people in that room are students. 1/4 of the people in the room are staff, 1/4 are parents, and 1/4 are community members. And really, again, being intentional about ensuring that people maybe who have historically not been in the room for those conversations are there. So our special education families and students, our students of color, those people in our community that have been impacted by poverty and lower income circumstances. So we're really being intentional about that, and we think we're going to have a really great group of people, and we're going to see what comes out of that, and that's going to drive our eventual action plan and metrics moving forward. So those are the big things that are happening in our district, and we're really excited about them.
Great. John, your turn.
Well, I'm going to focus on partnerships, because we've learned that the more you partner with community members, businesses that have the same mission we do, is preparing our kids not just for graduation but for life after graduation. Critically important. And so if I start with early learning, one of the really successful initiatives this year was something we called Provider Night. And I got to give Black Lake Elementary a lot of credit. Misty Hinkle, the principal there, and her team came up with this idea of inviting all the daycare and preschool providers in her neighborhood to the school with their kindergarten team, their counselor, and support staff to learn what is all-day kindergarten, what's that look like, and how do we best prepare 3 and 4-year-olds to be successful when they walk through that kindergarten door at age 5. And feedback from them was not only a great program, but an eye-opener. And it was such a great idea, we said, well, if it's good at Black Lake, why not all 6 of our elementary schools? So it led to a district-wide hosting of all the providers in Tumwater that wanted to come. And we had a great turnout, and I think it will now be the first annual, and we plan to keep doing it. Another partnership example would be with career and technical education. And we talked about college and high school and college readiness, but what we know is that we have a subset of our kids who aren't headed there but do need family wage jobs and have a passion for a trade potentially or a tech field. And so we're expanding our career and technical options for kids. Our marketing students, as an example, this year have opened the door to a partnership with Toyota of Olympia, which is actually in Tumwater, and we're trying to get them to change their name. But they have opened their doors to the dealership in every department so that our students can learn about the back office with business and how does an auto dealership deal with transactions and bank loans, relationships with customers, credit applications, all of that, all the way to the shop operation where they're servicing vehicles. And so students in an auto program can see firsthand, here's a potential job I could have. And then likewise, their employees are coming to us now, mentoring and teaching our kids the application of what they're learning in class around marketing. And I guess the last example I would share is with our city. We launched last year the first Tumwater Community Summit, and it's a 3-way partnership between the City of Tumwater, Together, our lead nonprofit partner, and Tumwater School District. This year we're bringing in an expert. Her name is Donna Beagle from the Portland area, and the focus of our summit this month will be understanding more about poverty and the foundations of that, how you best work with families and students facing that, but most importantly, how do you prevent homelessness? And what are the strategies in a community, not just a school district, that help families keep from becoming homeless? Because it's very expensive to react to that and build new housing. Important. It's much less expensive and more effective to try and help families who might be on the cusp of that. And so those are some partnership examples we're involved with.
Great, congratulations. A lot of exciting things going on in all the districts. So, bless you, it's okay. Summer's coming up, so what's going on with, I know there's construction projects, and we mentioned earlier the capital budget was passed, so I know that's going to help. But there's also academic programs that go on in the summer. So Deb, let's talk about North Thurston and what's going on there.
So capital construction, Pleasant Glade Elementary School went out to bid in January. We were a little nervous because there's so much growth in our immediate community. We had lots of local contractors bid on that project, and we had very favorable bids. Construction started right at spring break, and if you visit the school right now, we're making accommodations for all of those changes that are going to happen. River Ridge High School will be the same size as Timberline High School and North Thurston High School in terms of student population next year. And one of their needs was another gymnasium. And so the auxiliary gymnasium is out to bid right now, and we're planning on school construction happening with that gymnasium this summer. Do you want to have others share about construction projects?
Sure,
otherwise I can jump
we
into
can.
summer
What's
school
happening
programming.
in Olympia?
So we're just finishing up the completion of mini buildings in 4 of our elementary schools. We already had our grand openings at Pioneer Elementary School, Hanson Elementary School, and Roosevelt. And our last one will be at McLean Elementary School, and those are beautiful buildings that we've had really fun ribbon cutting ceremonies with all the students there and touring the new classrooms. It's just been absolutely beautiful. This summer, we're going to begin doing, we actually have already started, 3 of our elementary schools are going to be having some pretty major remodels in the existing buildings. And that's also at Roosevelt and McLean and Centennial, where that's going to be happening. And then we have 2 major construction projects that we're going to be launching this summer at Olympia High School and Capitol. At Olympia High School, we're going to be replacing portables with permanent classrooms with a new building, up to, I think, 20 plus classrooms that are going there. Olympia is a large high school, has about 1,800 students. And Capitol High School is going to be getting a new theater and some classrooms attached with that. So yeah, we're very, very fortunate. Again, our voters were very generous, and we've got some big projects happening.
Great. What's happening in your school?
Well, we just did bid opening yesterday for a new access road out of Yelm High School, which will take, traffic's a major problem coming through Yelm, especially if there's a problem on I-5.
One road in, one road out.
And this will allow us to take 400 cars, student cars, off the road twice a day, and the city's also very supportive of that. So that'll go out to, they'll start construction next month. The students are involved in a naming activity right now, so they get to name the road. That'll be really fun. We're also, we purchased some property and we're renovating the building on that site to open up a new 18 to 21-year-old job readiness program for students with developmental disabilities. That's an exciting project for us. And we've been working really hard on our partnerships with the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club. And in Knockwood, we're getting really close to a Boys and Girls Club in Yelm. So we're hoping we get there.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
John?
In Tumwater, we're looking forward to wrapping up a modernization at East Olympia Elementary School, which includes some safety upgrades. Tumwater Hill is next in the queue, and that campus is literally a prototype of East Olympia, so we have the same contractor actually working on that project, and that will launch this summer and go through next year. And then we're in design phase for a new alternative learning center that will be on the Newmarket Skills Center campus. It will house the Secondary Options Alternative High School program that currently is at Black Hills. And then we're building extra classrooms there because we're looking at a CTE expansion for 9th and 10th graders potentially that would be located there as well. But that's in the conversation phase at this point.
Great. Okay, I'm going to loop back around to you about summer academic programs. Yeah.
Well, we have a couple great partnerships. One is with the YMCA for a Power Scholars program. It's free to our students at Lacey Elementary School. We'll serve over 125 students there this summer. It has an academic as well as an enrichment component, which will include field trips on Fridays or career speakers. So we're excited. This is our third year with that partnership. We also partner with Together, have had a long partnership with Together for Community Clubhouse, which is at 3 of our elementary schools. That's again a summer program that's free to students. And then we have a 3rd grade reading program that's available district-wide for students who are recommended by their teacher who could use a little extra boost in English language arts instruction.
Okay, great. Patrick, what about summer programs in Olympia?
Well, again, to sort of piggyback off what Deb just said, we have some similar things. I think the key whenever we talk about summer learning opportunities is the fact that summer learning loss is a real thing, and that we only have 180 days of school in a 360-day school year, or 365-day year. So do the math. More than half the time our students are not in school. And so again, there's been some research out there that shows that who's most negatively impacted by not going to school in the summer are low-income students that aren't having those enrichment activities, maybe aren't going on that trip to grandma's on the East Coast or something like that. So really making sure that we have those things is difficult because it's not funded. Just to go back to that, I mean, historically we've always charged tuition, you know, when people go to summer school. So we are fortunate to also have the Scholars Program partnership with the YMCA. Ours is at Garfield Elementary School. We have about 60 students that we serve in that, and I think we have more than that have applied this year. So we're still struggling to kind of come up with the funding for that, and it has all the components that Deb mentioned. We have some traditional credit retrieval options for students, and we house that at Orla, at the Regional Learning Academy. But we're having conversations about how we can expand that. I think that we need to talk about summer school not just being about credit retrieval, but we need to talk about acceleration opportunities for students. And I think there's a huge untapped potential for online learning opportunities throughout the summer because people they're not around, but they still want to do those things. And that's the beauty of online learning, is you're not confined to a location. So I think there's some opportunity there. And we also have many of our students that go over to Newmarket and take classes there during the summer as well. So we've got opportunities for students in the summer that are real good ones, but I think we've got the potential through our strategic planning process to think a little bit differently and expand those opportunities in the future.
Okay. Summer programs in Tumwater?
You're hearing a lot of overlap, so I won't repeat other than to say yes and yes. At the high school level, some credit retrieval, the Power Scholars Program, and we've followed Olympia and North Thurston's lead there based on the endorsement of their staff that provided that, and we had a great first year last summer. 2 new things we're looking at this year are 9th grade failure is a major focus in every school district and statewide now with the way schools are held accountable. And so we're looking at how do we maybe do something in the summer leading right into the school year that helps struggling 8th graders set themselves up for success, and what kind of support program can we link to that summer program that's there for them as they start 9th grade in a big high school and we want them to be successful. So that's shaping up, and we'll have more information soon around how that'll roll out. Similarly, we see a growing number of kindergarten kids come to us in the first days of kindergarten not quite ready. And so, you know, jump start to kindergarten. What sorts of things can we do for our youngest kids coming in to help them be successful? So those are 2 newer initiatives we're studying right now.
Okay. I've lost track. Did we talk summer programs in Yelm?
Not yet.
Go for it.
Also, similar refrain, but we have a 3rd grade reading program for students, and that can expand. We try to provide breakfast and lunch services for those programs as well, and transportation. We started last year a program called Tornado Academy, and that was an 8th to 9th grade transition. And it could serve two functions. They could front load some credit in the 9th grade or retrieve credit if they were falling behind in their classes. And there's also an experiential component where the students get to go off-site as a group and team build, and it just is a great way to get to know some of their teachers before they step onto the campus in 9th grade. We'll have a traditional online credit retrieval or credit acceleration. We have some kids who want to come in and say, I can't fit this class into my schedule, so I'll take it online so I can have different choices during the school year. And then another program where we have a lot of students on our campus is a community service project called Plant Another Row. And our students plant vegetables, and they grow it in their agricultural classes. And their goal is to donate 2 tons of fresh vegetables to the local food banks every summer. And so they have to come out and water and tend to the plants and pick them, and it's a big deal.
That's great. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time. Patrick, we're going to start with you on this last thing. You're the new guy, been around for 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
You've had a great first year, but I'm sure there's some special stories you'd like to share that, you know, now's your option.
Yeah, well, there's a ton. I mean, it's been an amazing first year in so many ways, getting to know the community, getting to know the staff. I've learned that this is an incredibly generous community with their time. I think I've mentioned this before. I mean, we average about 5,000 volunteers a year. They give 50,000 hours of time in our schools. And sometimes I think that's how we get away with some things, because we have so much of that. And I've learned that we have the most amazing teachers and incredible principals at our schools. I work with a great staff at the school district and a wonderful school board. So I just feel really fortunate to be in the Olympia School District. And I'm really excited about the strategic direction work that we have in front of us. I think that when we determine what those metrics are, and some of them were talked about here, you know, that there's a few, every student has their own individual story, but there's a few things that I think are really good indicators of the health of the system. Almost like when you go to the doctor, they don't give you every single thing when they give a test, but they look at your blood pressure, you know, weight and all those different, your temperature. So when we look at things like 9th grade failure rates, you know, let's be really, really intentional about that. Let's look at 3rd grade reading, because we know if they're not reading by 3rd grade, they're less likely to graduate. You know, let's look at our discipline rates. We know that when a student is suspended, they're more likely to not graduate, and they're more likely to end up incarcerated. I mean, there's these things that we really want to look at. And so I'm really excited, and I'm being a little bit redundant now, about our summit that's coming up, and getting really clear about what we want for our students, and coming out with those metrics so that we can really design a strategic plan that continues the great work that's been going on, but really grabs holds of those students who've historically not been reaching those high bars that we know all of our parents and we want for all of our kids. So I guess I'll just say that's what I'm really excited about to close out the year. This time of year is awesome because it's graduation time. I have a senior, my daughter's a senior, my middle daughter, and so the class of 2018 is going to be special in my house. But I know I have lots of parents that I've talked to, and they're getting ready to launch their students off to their college, career, whatever's next in their life. And it's such a cool thing about working in a school district. Not too many professions have that sort of culminating event where we can just say thank you. And it is a kindergarten, preschool through 12th grade thank you. And Olympia, I'm learning, has just a great just support system for all of our students throughout that to launch them into their graduation. So looking forward to those ceremonies and just happy to be working with this group.
Well, and congratulations to you on your first year. Did I? John, how about you? Special stories from the year?
Well, I guess I'd call out our equity work this year. It's really been a major focus all year long in Tumwater, and what excites me the most about that is we've had students significantly involved in helping shape what now has become a draft policy our school board has developed, and this month we're out vetting that policy. And at the policy level, that drives in a school district organization all other things in terms of looking through that lens and saying, are our systems and practices honoring the differences in students and families that we serve? And I say that that's important because at the state level now, we're held accountable for this thing called the achievement gap. And so if school districts don't become intentional about taking a look at those gaps and then the systems that might be contributing to those gaps, I think we miss an important part of our work. So hats off to our school board, our great staff for focusing on learning more about that, learning more about yourself, and how we can change our behavior and practices so that every kid, every parent, every family feels like they're respected, they're included, and they have the same opportunity any other kid has in Tumwater.
Okay. Brian.
It's really exciting when a school staff decides that they want to go above and beyond what's required. And a few years ago, we linked with a company called No Excuses University, and it's really an organizational structure that says if you can become exceptional in 6 areas, and those areas are culture, standards, collaboration, data management, interventions, and which one did I miss? Assessment, then, and sustain that over time, then student achievement blossoms. And we had 3 schools this year that decided that they wanted to pursue what's called the No Excuses endorsement. It means they had to produce a lot of documentation, videos that shows that not only do they have those systems in place, but they're built to sustain those over time. And we're really excited that those 3 schools were accepted, and they're in the network of schools, or maybe 1,200 of them in the western United States right now. And it's really galvanized those staffs around every kid can achieve. Every kid can do it. Everybody pulling in that same direction, and that direction is graduation. And we're really excited. We've got a couple more schools that are starting to work in that direction, and we know that the data of achievement will follow them. So we're really proud of them. And that's Lacamas Elementary, McKenna Elementary, and Yelm Middle School.
Congratulations.
So we have an exciting groundbreaking event scheduled for June 12th, and it's not a school groundbreaking event. It is for a new Lacey food bank. And you may recall I shared that the North Thurston Public Schools Board of Directors, the City of Lacey, and the Lacey South Sound Chamber identified their first compassionate community project, and it was to get funding for the Lacey Food Bank, the construction of a food bank in Lacey. More than 50% of the people who take advantage of the food bank are families with young children. And as John was mentioning, the goal of the food bank is to prevent homelessness. So when families need to cut corners, they know that the food bank can help bring food to the family so that they can use their limited dollars to stay in their homes. So our students all year long participated in a Make a Change drive by collecting coins for the food bank. We set a goal district-wide of $10,000, and so far we're at $26,000 that our students have collected and brought in, and we'll be presenting that check to the food bank on June 12th.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
That's
it's
remarkable.
pretty
That's
exciting.
really great. Well, I want to thank you all for being here, and I know your schedules are busy, and we do appreciate that you take time to come and share information with our viewers about education and issues of concern or celebration in our community. But the school year is quickly coming to an end. I hope you all have a restful summer. And we will see you again in September. And for all of you, it's graduation season. So, to the parents of the graduating class of 2018, good work. Your involvement in your students' education is a big reason that they're successful. To our graduating seniors, may your life journey be filled with success and joy. And before we leave, I do want to lift up one other name, not from our community, but this might have gone a little bit unnoticed. A teacher from the Joel E. Ferris High School in Spokane, Washington, one of Washington's own, was named the National Teacher of the Year. So we want to offer our heartfelt congratulations to Mandy Manning. She teaches English to newly arrived immigrants and refugees. So the Spokane School Areas District, I'm sure, is very proud of her, and we want to offer our congratulations for that national honor to one of Washington's own. So for all of us here at the Superintendent's Roundtable, I hope you'll join us again in the fall when we'll be talking about educational issues. If you want to get involved with your child's education, please get in touch with your school's principal or your teacher to find out about volunteer opportunities. And remember, if you're the parent of a preschool child, please read with your child 20 minutes a day. It's one of the best things you can do to get them ready for school. And while you're at it, throw in some counting games and numbers so they get a little interested in math too. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the fall.